Apologies, Councillor Lambert. I didn't mean to make you jump, or perhaps I did. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Horsham Planning Committee. I am Councillor Ellis Brown and I will be chairing the committee meeting this evening. Thank you for attending, and may I remind members of the public this is not a forum for the public to ask questions or challenge the points raised during the debate by officers and members of the committee. You must not engage with members or call out during the meeting. If you have requested to speak, when invited to do so, it's important that you keep to your allotted time. This will be monitored and you will be asked to finish promptly. Your comments and discussion points must be relevant to the application the committee is considering. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so should you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit located at the rear of the chamber, and we assemble outside the Lynn Cross Public House. May I ask members, the council members and members of the public, please turn off your mobile phones or other electronic devices or turn them to silent. And remember, when speaking, turn your microphones on, and when you finish, please turn them off. When members are voting, please ensure that you raise your hand clearly or your arms very clearly so that we can accurately capture the vote. I also remind members on the committee you cannot vote on applications within your ward. I would also remind everyone here, please show respect to each other throughout the meeting, especially as it's being live streamed. Please refrain from any personal comments relating to the officers and members of the committee. Before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right.
Sam Whitehouse, Planning Officer.
It's Matthew Porter, Planning Officer.
Emma Parks, Head of Development.
Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
And Liz Fennick, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda this evening is apologies for absence and notification of substitute members. Do we have any substitutes here this evening?
Yes, so we've received apologies from Councillor Peter van der Borg, and we have a substitute member, Nicholas Marks, attending in place of Councillor Joan Grech. Thank you.
Okay, you have noticed I have no vice chair this evening, as he was unable to attend the committee meeting. I therefore move that Councillor Lim Lambert is put forward as a temporary vice chair for this meeting. Do I have a seconder? Okay. Are there any other nominees? Okay, all those in favour of Lynn Lambert as vice chair this evening, please show. Okay, therefore the motion to elect Lynn Lambert as vice chair for this meeting has been carried. Please, if you could join me at the table here, please, Councillor Lambert. Thank you. Mental block, eh? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of November. Do you all agree I can sign these as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Thank you very much. Before I go into the declarations of members' interest, I just point out that, as you're all aware, you may not vote on application within your own wards. So item number 5, Councillor Marks will not be able to vote on this item. Item number 8, Councillor Lambert will not be able to vote. Item number 9, DC 24-1601, Councillor Trott, you will not be able to vote. And item 11, Councillor Blackburn, you will not be able to vote on this application. Thank you. Are there any declarations of members' interest? No? Okay, thank you very much. moving forward to the announcements from the chair. For agenda items 7, 8 and 9, the officer will make a single presentation covering all 3 applications. However, each application will be discussed and voted on separately. Move to the first item on the agenda, application this evening, which is DC 251138, land north of Glebe Farm and Kingsbarn Lane, Steyning. Please could the officer make the presentation to committee? Thank you.
So good evening, members. Please note, since publication of the committee agenda, one further representation in objection has been received. This raises no new issues not already detailed in the committee report. So this reserve matters application seeks approval for outstanding details not included within the outline application, namely layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. As shown in red on the slide, the site, which benefits from outline planning approval for 265 homes, is to the east of the town of Steyning, adjoining its built-up area boundary. Some of this site context is shown on the slide, which doesn't materially differ from that considered at outline stage. Some views are shown outward from the site towards Kingsbarn Lane, some of the impacted residential properties, the heritage asset and the battery storage unit circled red on the slide. So as detailed in the committee report, these considerations have been carefully assessed alongside other relevant material planning considerations, including ecology, noise and drainage, and all the impacts on these matters are judged acceptable, subject to mitigations and safeguards secured by the suite of conditions and obligations across this multi-phase consent proposal. So that's the outline permission, the legal agreement which accompanied that, this reserve matters application, and the stage of condition discharge to those 2 permissions. On this slide is the scheme layout, a comparison of that indicatively presented outline with the layout at reserve matters for your consideration today. This has been informed by the suite of parameter plans approved at outline stage, and there is judged to be substantial conformance. On the slide now is the character areas to the scheme, again a comparison of that indicatively presented outline, with the layout at reserve matters informed by the design and access statement and the outline design code approved at outline stage. Again, there is judged to be substantial conformance. So on the new housing design, some examples shown here on the slide, it's considered these take appropriate reference to the adjoining residential development and the rural edge context. As you'll note in the committee report, the overall mix of new homes, open market and 40% affordable provision offer a range of types and sizes to accord with local demographic need, with the fixing of the affordable tenure provision at obligation discharge stage. So in overall conclusion, the applicant, in your officer's views, presents a reserve matters application in substantive conformance with the parameters and the conditions approved at outline, alongside mitigations to harms where necessary for the approval of outstanding details to deliver sustainable development when those harms are weighed against the benefits as required by national policy, and accordingly the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite the first speaker this evening, which is John Longhorn, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to begin by recognising the work of Horsham District Council officers whose constructive engagement and rigorous scrutiny of the past year has helped shape a robust and responsive proposal. We welcome officers' recommendation for approval. This proposal has been informed by extensive pre-application and post-submission dialogue with your officers, Steyning Parish Council, district councillors, local stakeholder and environmental groups, and crucially neighbouring residents, particularly along Kingsbarn Lane. I would like to thank Councillor Victoria Finnegan, members of Steyning Parish Council, Parish Clerks John Fulbrook and Leanne Poole, Greening Steyning, the Community Orchard and Steyning Neighbourhood Plan Steering Committee for their constructive input. And most importantly, I would like to thank the residents of Kingsbarn Lane for their openness and positive engagement throughout. We have listened, and that engagement has directly informed changes to the scheme. Concerns regarding pedestrian safety have been addressed. Residents' concerns about overlooking and overbearing impacts have also been addressed, alongside early discussions on boundary treatments and landscaping. And we have also improved pedestrian cycle connectivity. Requests to support community activity have also been met through enhanced facilities, providing utility access to enable community functions and events coupled with the new pavilion. The scheme is therefore the product of a genuinely collaborative process. And matters of sustainability are of great importance to Vistry and indeed HDC and Steyning Parish Council. And as a company, we continue to reduce our CO2 emissions and are aiming to be net carbon zero. And this includes attending to embodied carbon within materials. Sustainability is at the core of our approach, as we will incorporate measures such as PV solar panels, air source heat pumps, high levels of insulation, including windows to ensure low air permeability, wastewater heat recovery from the shower, bath, etc., which will preheat the boiler, and electric vehicle charging points for every dwelling, including one-bed units. These energy-efficient measures will result in lower running costs for our purchasers and affordable housing partners, as well as limit the impact of our development on the environment, as the development will be fossil fuel free. Finally, I can confirm that 40%, i.e. 106 units of the dwellings proposed, will be affordable housing. As of last month, Steyning Housing Register showed that there were 151 households in need. Given the affordable mix proposed as 1, 2 and 3 bed units, this will significantly contribute in meeting this demand. The Chair, agreeing the officer's recommendation today will significantly help meet Steyning's housing need, both in terms of affordable housing and also for those people looking to get onto the housing ladder and those downsizing as part of an attractive, well thought out, sustainable scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Invite Chris Barker, please, and you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and support this reserved matters application. Members are fully aware that the principle of development, access and scale were established at outline stage, as suggested by officers. What is before you today is a detailed scheme that delivers on that consent, responds carefully to local concern and has been refined through extensive engagement with officers, statutory consultees and the Parish Council. I would like to briefly address 4 key points. Firstly, sustainable design. The scheme before you has been shaped by a landscape-led approach and a strong green and blue infrastructure network. It delivers over 6 hectares of open space, a community orchard, wetlands and SUDS features that manage water on site and enhance biodiversity. In energy terms, the applicant is committed to significant on-site renewables, with at least 50% of homes fitted with solar PV alongside air source heat pumps. Secondly, the affordable housing provision is in excess of the 35% current policy provision. That's 106 homes, as you've just heard. That's a significant public benefit, and these homes are fully integrated across the site and will be secured through the Section 106 agreement to meet local needs. Third, highways and movement. The access strategy was fully approved at outline, including the new A283 roundabout. Since then, the internal layout has been significantly improved following discussions with the county highways. The scheme now includes raised tables, traffic calm streets and a 3-metre wide shared pedestrian and cycle routes that connect across the site into the wider network beyond towards Bramber. Finally, the battery energy storage system. The BESS is an existing neighbouring facility. Its presence has been fully assessed and the scheme has been amended to ensure appropriate separation distances acoustic mitigation and fire safety compliance. West Sussex Fire and Rescue have confirmed that the proposals meet national NFCC guidance, and environmental health officers are also satisfied that noise impacts are entirely appropriate. In conclusion, members, this reserve matters scheme is policy compliant, technically robust, and has been positively refined through collaboration with council officers and stakeholders. It delivers much needed housing, a policy exceeding level of affordable housing, strong sustainability credentials, safe highway infrastructure and appropriate mitigation where required. I hope therefore you will support your officer's strong recommendation of approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the ward member, Councillor Victoria Finnegan. And you have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Victoria Finnegan and I'm the Ward Councillor for Stenning. We've all been working hard and closely together on the details of the reserve matters for many months, as you've just heard. And I'd like to thank everyone involved, especially the parish council clerks, whose commitment from the meetings back we had in February right through to now has been invaluable. Vistry and their communications team must continue engaging with residents, the parish, the councillors, so this becomes a flagship development for the town. This application for 265 homes is one of the most significant proposals Stenning has faced, and many are opposed to the development. However, through engagement, important elements have been secured. No gas, moving and the orientation of proposed properties adjacent to Kings Barn Lane, ground and air heat source pumps, sensitive lighting, obscuring electrical substation, engagement with local businesses, fading of hoardings, green spaces, and housing provision that reflects the housing register. Plus, ecological mitigation measures, including swift bricks, bat boxes, hedgehog highways, show how housing can support biodiversity as well as people. In addition, close collaboration between residents, Vistry, Parish Council and our case officer have secured agreements on matters from using more flint in the design to reflect local character to ensuring water and electrical hookups in new community spaces. These are positive steps and I thank all parties for the constructive engagement. However, I'd like to talk about a couple of items. Here, boundary treatment on Kings Barn Lane, as you heard this evening. I now request that a condition be attached, requiring ward members to be directly involved in discussions surrounding the boundary treatments. Residents of Kings Barn Lane, particularly numbers 39 to 43, must have their amenity protected. This includes decisions around the positioning and the height of the Vistry fence, the retention and or enhancement of existing hedges, hedgerow, bramble hedges, field trees. In addition, planting details in the buffer zone must be secured to protect both amenity and security. I appreciate the boundary illustrations that have already been provided as a positive collaborative start, but this condition is essential to ensure local voices are respected. Many residents have found this process stressful, and clarity on the boundary treatment at this stage would go a long way to alleviating their worries. Securing a condition is therefore vital, not only to respect local voices, but to provide reassurance and peace of mind to those most directly affected. On solar panels, as has already been mentioned, Vistry have already agreed in writing outside of these reserved matters that at least 50% of the dwellings will be fitted with PV solar panels. I request that a condition be attached requiring this minimum percentage so that the written communication is formally secured within the planning approval, taking the ecology report into consideration with the integrated tiles. This will ensure that Horsham's climate emergency declaration is meaningfully addressed whilst cutting bills and reducing emissions and demonstrating leadership and sustainability. On the walking and cycling route, I request that an informative be attached to the reserve matters, highlighting the importance of walking and cycling route through the development and extending safely to the new White Bridge, avoiding the dangers on Kings Barn Lane. Whilst agreement could not be reached with consultees at this stage, it is vital that communication remains open. This route would strengthen sustainable transport links and improve safety for residents and should remain a clear expectation as the scheme progresses. Looking ahead, with other schemes likely to come forward soon, ward councillors and the parish will continue to work with Vistry on traffic management, ensuring development does not harm the historic town. The parish council and residents want to remain proactive with topics from the leaps, speed restrictions to the road names. In conclusion, this application can deliver housing and community benefits, but only if robust conditions are attached. Boundary treatment involvement and solar panel provision must be secured by provision, and an informative on the walking and cycling routes must guide with reserved matters. Let us set a benchmark here, the development that is sustainable, respectful and led by the community. Thank you. And in addition, Chair, as discussed, Councillor Richard Bell from Steyning Parish Council, I would just like to read a few of his words, if that's okay, as they weren't able to register this evening.
Okay, as I take it's quite a brief note.
It's quite brief. In fact, I'll just go to the main 4 points if we're out of time. I would like to emphasise 4 main points. Green energy. We hold the desire to maximise the potential of solar, and whilst welcoming the 50% offered, more would be good. If there is a green sustainable feel to the whole development, it would carry more as an exemplar and USP for Steyning development. 2. Market and affordable housing. The housing mix has been enhanced to better align with local need. We are keen that there is no dilution of this as the build progresses. Traffic management plan. We would like to see a comprehensive traffic management plan that includes reassurances that Steyning Town Centre will not be forced to use as a rat run whilst the A283 becomes congested. This will be a particular concern when the new school commence works. And finally, Southern Water advises that there may be an increased risk of impact on the sewer network. Mitigation is more by tankering of unmanaged demand. This is not a sound basis for development. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just take the opportunity to come back on the points raised around the suggestion of conditions. The traffic management plan, because it's a multi-phased consent, we've obviously got a raft and suite of conditions that were imposed on the outline permission, and one of those is the construction environmental management plan. So that's condition 6 of the outline permission. What will happen is the reserve matters would have to comply with the discharge of that condition once it comes in. I do know from the developer that they are keen to progress the implementation, and we do have one of a discharge application in with the council that's registered but not valid, and it does include the SEMP. So, well, I think actually it is validated. So that detail will be considered at a very immediate time in terms of the new year. So consultation has gone out to the Highway Authority to consider elements related to traffic movement within that submission. In terms of the walking and cycling route within the site, what the council is referring to is the suggestion by the parish of an additional or a substitute route on the southern boundary running to the back of the properties, which would enter out onto Kingsbarn Lane. This has gone through various consultee opinions to whether it's an appropriate route to go. The general consensus from the conservation officer, landscape architect within the district council is not to support it. That doesn't mean necessarily that the informative can't be imposed to ensure as the condition, for example, to deal with hard and soft landscaping, which would include materials to do with the surface roads and also the footways within the scheme and the cycle route. to make sure that that emphasis of delivery of high standard of design is not lost, and it will remind the developer to be aware of that if members want to put that informative on. In terms of the boundary treatment, so what's been referred to by the councillor is the
It's for the other members, it's not for you, but if you want to.
so this relates around the plots to the southern edge of the boundary, so 108 to 114 principally, but not exclusively. What has happened is that as part of negotiations, there's been a change in the position of the buildings within the development, so a greater separation distance provided, and within that landscape buffer, the conversation has been mostly around, well, what vegetation can be provided in there within that space that can be appropriate and suitable to provide screening, but also to be effective at ensuring easement constraints around that area. If members feel that it's necessary, there is a possibility of expanding condition 6 on the recommendation, that's the hard and soft landscaping, to include member engagement with that.
Can I just,
So-
sorry. Oh, but clearly it's up to members what they wish to do with that condition, but I think you've probably heard me say at committee before, as we're considering applications in the context of the district as a whole, when we're ensuring consistency of decision making across the district as a whole, my professional view is it's not, in terms of the wording of the condition, we don't add in consultation with local ward members, just because we have to consider consistency across all decision making. That's not to say that they can't engage in the process, of course, but it would be best to perhaps add the chair and vice chair in terms of the exact wording, because ultimately the committee is saying that they wish to have an input in that. I think otherwise there may be a particular option here, but ultimately we have to ensure that's consistent with the decisions we're making across the district. We can't have one developer being required to provide significantly more than another, for instance. So that, but ultimately that's your decision, members, but that's just my take on it. And I don't know if you wanted to come back on the PV panels.
Yeah, so on the PV, obviously what we're looking at is the policy requirements as the test to whether it's acceptable in planning terms. And whilst it's very favourable that there is a commitment expressed by the developer for 50% minimum, we don't have a policy framework both within the HDPF but also within the Standing Neighbourhood Plan to uplift that standard to, say, for example, 100% or any requirement whatsoever at all. So I would be not recommending to impose that condition, because I don't think it will be able to meet the tests of it being firstly necessary for the policy compliance.
Thank you very much. Open it up for debate with the members. Got two hands straight up. Councillor Livingston, and I come to Councillor Franklin.
Okay, my concern primarily relates to the BESS site, which is located near the planned dwellings. But before I go any further, let me give you some information on my credentials to speak on this issue. I'm a chartered engineer, a member of the Institute of Fire Engineers, I'm a member of the Institute of Fire Protection Officers, and on this body I sit on the Executive Committee and also chair their membership committee. Now, members, I suggest you look at page 43. My first item is, concern regarding 6.78, which states that there is an FM 200 fire suppression system installed. I really certainly hope that there isn't a gaseous fire protection, which is what FM 200 is, as it is very ineffective for this type of application. The NFCC guidance, which the applicant refers to, states the installation of water-based suppression systems for fires involving cell modules is more effective. So here we already know that we haven't got adequate fire suppression in accordance with the National Fire Chiefs Council guidance. Then let's go on to reference 6.80 on the same page. A comparison of the best being located in a barn to that of a barn filled with farm machinery is hard to understand. Best installations can have fires that rapidly grow and release very toxic gases. The risk greatly surpasses any similar fires from farm machinery. Farm machinery, or if you've got hay or straw in a barn, can be simply put out by the application of water. It is far different to a best fire, which will take a lot longer to extinguish, and there will be considerable amount of contaminated water, as well as the release of very toxic gases. And of course, there is also a significant explosion risk, which could endanger nearby residents if adequate facilities are not provided. This information hasn't been provided to us. Now, when this application was previously presented, it was understood an adequate and suitable risk assessment would be provided, and it was assumed that this would be carried out by a competent engineer. Taking into account the information required as listed in the NFCC guidance under system design and construction, the majority of the items have not been considered. And we do know that we do have an incorrect suppression system, ineffective suppression system installed. I don't think we have enough information at best to be satisfied that we wouldn't be endangering residents who would occupy these houses. I would like to propose a motion to defer this application until we have a full and proper assessment of that installation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Livingston. I will ask the officers to respond to your points you've raised. Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously this is a concern, it was a concern raised at outline. We have moved further on in terms of understanding more what is inside the BESS as information that the councillors referred to. I think it's important to understand that there's a distinction between what's the planning system is there to consider in terms of acceptability and what the NFCC guidance and the fire safety legislation regulatory control is there to do, because they aren't necessarily overlapping in the same way that perhaps people would perceive them to be. So in terms of the planning acceptability, we have gone to the fire safety officer at West Sussex, and it's in their own words that comparison to the barn at paragraph 6.80. They're the ones who made that comparison and put it in that context. And fundamentally, we have to look at the NFCC guidance in the sense of what planning can control in terms of layout of development, because it is the development which needs to adapt and respond to the risk, not the best operator. We can't impose operational constraints or additional upgrade to the BESS through the planning condition, because the housing scheme is the agent of change. So when we look at the NFCC guidance and how it relates to layout of the development, we've got that very clear direction of distance between a dwelling and a BESS facility. So that's a minimum of 25 metres under the current guidance, 2023, and the more rigorous threshold of the consulted 2024 draft guidance at 30 metres. So in both circumstances, we're at 39 metres. So we're well in excess of both current guidance and draft guidance. The draft guidance was meant to be in place 2025 this year. Well, we're near at the end, which I think is an indication of the government is satisfied that there isn't an imperative to seek greater thresholds in current practice. They're happy that the 2023 guidance is effective. So going back to that, that is the 25 metres. It's also clear in the 2023 guidance that if you meet that distance, there isn't the necessity for further mitigation, such as blast walls. So the clear sort of baseline of acceptability is the distance. One of the other considerations is if there was a fire instance, what is the development downwind of the prevailing wind direction for the smoke and the heat? And what we have now is the odour assessment, which inconsequently also looks at the wind direction and demonstrates that the development will be downwind. There's other mention in the guidance about vegetation on the site being a sufficient distance away to avoid contributing to fire risk. That's been met. And allied but not directly within the guidance is the internal state road network about accompanying emergency vehicles and the full fire tender tracking. So that meets the building regulations and the NFCC guidance. And we've also got that condition that the outline permission for fire hydrant infrastructure that can be secured in proximity to the BEST and the eastern parcel. So overall, we have all of that. The applicant has looked at the guidance. They've drawn out where planning can have an influence on it in terms of relation to the considerations we're looking at today, which is the layout principally and building arrangement on the site. We've got the professional advice from the fire safety officer who is satisfied with the development. It would be very difficult, I think, to draw a conclusion that we haven't had the robust and sufficient assessment information to draw a conclusion on acceptability.
Councillor Livingstone, yes.
Right, okay. The distance figure, that's set on the basis that there is adequate protection, that the other features within the best protection are present. It's clearly, in this application, in this instance, it's not. So we cannot consider the 25 or 30 metres as being the correct figure. We do not know what's in that building. I also wanted to make sure I'm making the correct assessment. I contacted a number of my colleagues, okay, and they've all agreed. And to be honest, they were quite surprised that the fire service officer had made that comparison to a normal barn fire. Now, we do have a duty to look after life safety for our residents, which trumps planning as far as I'm concerned, and we have to be very careful how we move. Now, that best facility must have a fire strategy in place which details the protection requirements in there, but we haven't seen it. Why hasn't it been made available to us? We've got bits and pieces here, and we know that one part is incorrect. What else do we don't know? So I still think we should defer this application until we have more information.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Livingston. I will come back to you when other members have spoken if you want to come forward with that motion. Thank you. Councillor Franklin.
Thanks, Chair. And yes, I just want to check my understanding of the issue at para 6.21, which relates to the mix of affordable rental accommodation and the mix between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings. And what I'm reading from that is that that's still under discussion. It's not resolved. It's not something that we're currently happy that we've arrived at the final solution. And that, if I read it correctly, I just want to check this, that the decision tonight to approve sort of excludes that particular item from approval, if that's how I read 6.21. Could you just comment on that, please?
Yes, that's the correct reading, so that's still under negotiation. So that will be resolved through the discharge of the obligation under the section 106.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. Just for avoidance of doubt, would that need to come back then to committee? I guess not.
No.
Councillor Raby.
Yes, I'm afraid that I need to declare a declaration of interest because of what Councillor Finnegan has raised in terms of the treatment. My father-in-law owns one of the properties that's directly there. I didn't think it was going to be relevant to what we were discussing today, but if there's going to be issues in terms of councillor input, it would be at the back of his garden. So I feel that if that's going to be relevant, I'm not sure I'd be able to vote on that matter.
Thank you. I will seek guidance on that. Thank you, Councillor Raby. Taking advice from the lawyer, because of the interest, I think it would be beneficial and should be that you should leave the chamber and not participate in the discussion. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Councillor Vickers, are you? Yeah, okay.
Chairman, if we've moved away from the discussion about BESS, I was going to talk about the boundary treatment of the southern part of the site. The local member was quite clear about her concerns that that should be strengthened. And if I've understood the head of development saying we should be consistent in the way we deal with these things, I totally understand that. However, I know in the past we have consulted local members on landscaping matters. And I cannot see any issue that would prohibit that from happening here. The developer has been very reasonable in trying to overcome concerns, and I can't see that this is going to be a problem. So I'd be happy to support that being part of the recommendation if the condition could be tightened. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got one. Sorry. Just one comment. I think the officer misspoke. The development would be upwind from the BESS, not downwind of the BESS, which is significant difference. Specifically, touching on paragraph 6.17 and then 6.21, I'm quite pleased to see that in the social housing that in fact we're going to end up with slightly higher number of 4-bedroomed social housing, which is like hen's teeth in terms of social. So that's a positive win. But looking at the discussion in paragraph 6.17 through to 6.21, essentially we end up with a lot of two-bedroom houses, which is less than what we would want. Is this simply because of a negotiation, or why can't we have what we need in terms of affordable housing, which is 3 to 4 bedroom houses rather than 1 and 2 bedroom houses? And I have a corollary to that in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's basically why we're in the position we are at paragraph 6.21. We're basically saying there is no provision of 2 beds. We have got some success in negotiations, and there has been a reduction in the 2 bed and an increase in the 3 bed. But as officers, we feel that there's still scope for further balancing of those 2 types of property, so we get hopefully more 3 beds. Obviously, for developers in the room, so they can hear your concern as well as we continue to explore. But there will still need to be a mix, because that's what our housing requirements ask for.
If I may, Chairman, I'll come back on that. I mean, what I was trying to say was, good job on the 4 and 3 bedroom houses. Shame we've got all these 2 bedroom houses, is the point I was making. I understand that we need a mix, but I don't understand the point that was made earlier on. We don't have an agreement under 6.21. We're not voting on the affordable housing and the rest of it, unless I've misread this, because you just said it would be in the 106. But in the text of what we're voting on, the S106 is not mentioned at all. In other planning committee decisions, it is specifically stated, unless I've missed it, it is specifically stated that we would agree the planning permission and the S106 would be agreed within 3 to 4 months, otherwise it would come back. This seems to be missing from this, unless I've missed it in the text. So maybe you might want to clarify that?
Yeah, so the recommendation is correct, because I think there's a genuine perception that this is a separate application to the outline, but what people kind of need to sort of get their head around is that the permission is a multi-stage consent. So there's the outline, the reserve matters, the section 106 obligations, which apply to both parts. So
I think what you're trying to say, Matt, is it's already in the section 106 that we secured an outline. Is that basically? Yeah.
Yes, Chair, that's correct. It was
Well,
completed last
helps.
year. Yeah. I
Okay,
was
well,
looking
then
at it just today. It was completed last year in November, 29th of November.
Oh, well, that's good to know, because I was worried that something would be left dangling unagreed, if you see what I'm trying to say.
No, but the wording of Section 106 agreements, which have affordable housing schedules, always allow for some negotiation later, because obviously there can be considerable time between outline permission and the time at which the affordable housing is delivered, and it may be that, you know, slightly different requirements present themselves, which can be accommodated by later negotiation.
My other question is, why is there an issue with PVs on roofs? Basically, in paragraph, I think it is 6.26, there is reference to dissatisfaction of having too many PV solar panels on roofs, and I don't get this. And I would also make the comment that there's a reference there about condition 12. There is no condition 12 in the paper.
So the reference to the condition number should refer to condition 11, the last condition of the reserve matters recommendation, which is to remove permitted development rights for certain plots along the eastern parcel. So the whole commentary from the conservation officer about suitability of PV is based on the setting of the listed building, which is just off the drawing you can see in front of you, but it's on the eastern side of Kings Barn Lane. but also feeds into South Downs National Park setting and also landscape architect comments. I think it's about a balance between obviously encouraging green energy, renewables, but where they're appropriate to context. And we're not in condition 11 saying you can't have them as a future homeowner, or if a developer decides to put them forward. What it means is they just have to go through the application rigor of a submission so we can control the type of PV. Because if you were to go for the slightly older model, they can look quite stark if you cover the whole roof, and potentially there's a reflective quality to them. Newer products coming into the market are better at dealing with those. So what Condition 11 doesn't do is prohibit homeowners from installing them, but just enables us a level of control to make sure that the product is sensitive, perhaps on the right roof slope, so it's less visible from the setting of a listed building.
Thank you.
Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. So, donning my virtual rubber gloves, I note in 6.86, with regard to Southern Water identifying there's a minor sewer capacity issue, but equally that they haven't objected. I believe this is to be controlled by Condition 12 of the Outline Planning Permission. Now, Condition 12 is a pre-commencement condition. So, and I just wanted to check. So my first question is, does that mean no work should be carried out on the roundabout and the access until that condition has been satisfied? I've got others. Shall I carry on? Or maybe I'll carry on, let the officer, yeah, if that's all right. So the next point is that the approval of this condition is really down to the local planning authority. However, I'm not convinced that we're actually experts in how to dispose of sewage, which is a Southern Water issue. So I'd be grateful for a little bit of an explanation as to how that condition will be approved, given the lack of expertise in-house, if I can put it that way. And the reason I ask about this is that last year, the particular storm overflow spilled for a total of 600 hours. And clearly we're going to add more water to that system, so that's not going to help. And currently, Southern Water say that they're not planning on doing anything to that sewage works until after 2030, which of course is when most of these buildings will have been completed, if all goes to plan. Taking off my rubber gloves and putting on cycling mitts, I think the 3-metre path west to east through the development is to be welcomed, even though it does finish some 130 metres from the eastern exit onto Kings Barn Lane. The question of the exit has been mentioned already, and I thank the officer for that explanation. And of course, there is a southern exit, which I believe the shared use path continues down to. But within, where are we, paragraph 6.58, I note that the internal street layout is designed for low vehicle speeds, 20 mile an hour or less, which again I welcome, but was wondering if the question of a site-wide 20 mile an hour speed limit, as in Bramber and Upper Beeding, has been raised with West Sussex Highways or the developer. And finally, to builders' gloves. I welcome the commitment to a gas-free development and for half or more of the dwellings to have solar PV, although obviously, as has already been said, 100% will make more financial sense to prospective residents. But I have to accept that this local planning authority has no control over such matters. However, I note that none of the street scenes in the May 2025 design and access document show solar panels of any sort. And that leads me to ask, as in fact raised by Councillor Finnegan, firstly, would it be feasible to condition that 50% more of the dwellings should be equipped with a solar PV energy system of appropriate size? And I think perhaps the officers already answered that one. But more relevantly, can we somehow condition that the use of solar tiles or inset solar panels to minimise the visual intrusion that Councillor Clark raised just now, or his question raised? So that was my final question. Thank you.
So back to the solar panels. The reserve matters condition 5, materials and finishes, does include external surfaces. So what we would expect to receive in discharge of that would be a schedule which we can put an informative on if you wish to say that that should include solar renewable equipment. So there will be a control through that in terms of the materials to be used.
Yes, I'd welcome that. Thank you.
On the 20 miles an hour, so I think I wasn't quite sure the point you were trying to convey. Basically, the estate is being looked at from the Highway Authority, and they've looked at the design and the street widths, road carriageways, etc. And it's sort of best practice to try and reduce traffic flow and encourage low traffic speed through estates designs now. So they would have looked at that and felt that the design is appropriate to achieve that. In terms of the exit out onto Kingsbarn Lane being north of where another exit is desired by the parish, that's gone through a safety consideration by both the applicant and West Sussex, and they're very concerned about a suggestion of bringing an exit out further south than what's shown in terms of visibility on that bend, and just the factor so you're encouraging people to come off from the White Bridge link across into that corner. So for that reason, plus ones I've mentioned already about the impact on vegetation on Kingsbarn Lane, loss of as a consequence of another access or an alternative access, plus the effect on the listed building, basically all the specialist consultees are not encouraging of that exit at Southern to where it's shown. In terms of the sewerage, so yes, you're right, we've got condition 12 of the outline permission. It is a no development shall commence. So as part of that, we would be looking for any details to be informed by the phasing strategy that's been presented in this application. So we would consult Southern Water and they would look at the details and look at the timescale of that phasing strategy in terms of the sewerage infrastructure. So at that point, you're raising about the time span. That would be a consideration in terms of the details for when we come to the developer comes to discharge that condition, which will be very imminent as they want to start work on site in the new year.
So in that case, the details of what Southern Water would be proposing would come through the discharge of the conditions. So it'd be in public information at that stage.
Yep, so as part of the discharge of that condition, the applicant will be has submitted an application, or I don't know whether that particular condition is in that suite, but they will have to go through that process. They will provide details on the public register file. We will go to Southern Water, consult them, and their comments will come back and be on the public register.
Thank you.
Okay, any other member wishing to speak before I come back to Councillor Livingstone? No? Okay, Councillor Livingstone, your reason for deferral, please, and the motion you are proposing.
The reason I want deferment is to understand what the risks are from the BESS installation within the enclosed barn. That's from fire and explosion and contamination, and both the water and the air. What I'd like to do is to propose deferment so that the applicant can arrange to have a professional engineer investigate the site and provide the details, taking into account the information required as listed in the NFCC guidance under system design and construction, so that we know what is actually in that installation. And from there we can work out if the 25 to 30 metre separation distance is suitable.
Thank you, Councillor Livingstone. I think we need to understand what we can actually control a part of the planning application. Obviously, we can control the land within the red edge of the application site. We can't, unfortunately, add a condition in requiring a third-party landowner to effectively engage in the planning permission and provide input into that. We do have some details of what the BESS contains, and obviously that has informed the comments from the fire brigade in their consultation response. As my colleague said earlier, we have to assess whether this application and the layout is acceptable in the context of the location of the BESS and the information we know. We can't require the BESS to give us information or to do measures etc. It's not within the remit of this planning application. We have no powers in which to control them to do that. So we have to assess whether the application and the layout is acceptable on the basis of the information we know. And obviously we have a risk assessment. We have looked at the guidance. We have consulted the fire brigade, and they are satisfied. But obviously it has been put forward as a motion, so the chairman will consider whether that's seconded and move forward. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Knoll, thank you. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Sorry, Councillor Troppy,
I was hoping that we would be able to ask a few questions about it ourselves. I had one question I wanted to ask Councillor Livingstone. Just a yes or no question, just so I understand what I'm voting for.
You're
that-
voting for this to be deferred for further information on fire.
The question I wish to ask is whether or not Councillor Livingstone would give 100% confirmation that we cannot rely on the assurances given within the report of the fire service, and that we should therefore defer. I want to make sure that absolutely the assurances in the report we cannot rely on. That's my question to him, and I'm not sure. I thought I was going to be given a chance to ask it.
I can give that assurance on the basis of my professional standing, and that the fact the information we have does demonstrate there is inadequate fire protection already on site. And that's within the report. So, as far as I'm concerned, we do not have enough information to be able to assess the remainder of the site, or whether it's safe enough to put houses adjacent to it.
Yes, Chair, just to reiterate what was said previously by my colleague, that we have absolutely no power to require the BESS operator to provide us with anything. And if they decide not to cooperate, what then? We need to resolve this application with or without that information, and I think it's unlikely to be forthcoming, because why would anybody engage with the planning application and put themselves to all that trouble if they didn't have to? There's absolutely nothing in it for them.
Well, there's a duty to respond within fire safety. There's Fire Safety Regulatory Reform Act, and they would have to, I would think, if there were any sort of decent organisation, respond adequately.
But they've already responded when they put in
And
their...
provided information which demonstrates its inadequate fire protection.
Sorry.
But they did that when they installed the BESS themselves. And so as far as they're concerned, they are carrying out an operation according to the requirements that were imposed on them at the time. This planning application is of no consequence to them at all.
I agree it may be no consequence to them. It is consequence to the residents if an incident occurs, and it could be a very serious incident. I've been trying not to mention about Grenfell and the issue with the Chelsea and Kensington Council, but we have to be careful. We do have a duty of protection.
Chair, just to point out, that was to do with building regulations, no, not the planning system.
I'd just like to ask you a question. How often are such facilities checked?
They should be checked regularly. It depends on the type of systems in there, which we do not know what type of systems. We don't know what type of batteries. We don't know what type of stored energies are present. All of these.
Yeah.
And it's an aging system, so we would expect at least I would personally expect at least every 3 months, but there'll also be automatic checking as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Now the officer is going to offer some guidance to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to read out a very short paragraph from the National Fire Chiefs Council's guidance, April 2023. Oh, it's on the screen. Well, I'll read it anyway. Distance from BESS units to occupied buildings and site boundaries. So individual site designs will mean that distances between BESS units and occupied buildings, site boundaries will vary. Proposed distances should take into account risk and mitigation factors. However, an initial minimum distance of 25 metres is proposed prior to any mitigation. So it says prior to any mitigation, 25 metres is acceptable. So I think we just need to bear in mind that advice. Thank you.
Councillor Knoll, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Following the advice from our legal officer, I am going to withdraw my secondment.
Okay,
Second.
My what? My seconding, not my secondment. I'm so sorry.
One wonders where you're going back to anyway. Thank you. But... Okay, so do you still wish to pursue the motion, Councillor Livingstone?
Well, the motion would fail by the looks of it, but I would want to make sure that it's recorded in the minutes about the information I presented in my technical capacity. Thank you.
Okay, so we're not moving forward with that motion. Does any other member wish to make any comments before we go to the vote on this particular application? Councillor Vick.
Chairman, I'm happy for you to go to the vote on the recommendation, but I just wondered if we could tighten up that condition on the landscaping on the boundary at the south in consultation with the local member. I know the head of development wasn't happy about that, but I can't see any problem with it. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to review the wording for that condition or change to that condition?
Boundary treatment to the southern boundary in consultation with the
Microphone.
Chairman and Vice Chairman and the local members. Thank you.
Coming back to Ward Councillor Marks. Informative, or Councillor Croker, informative around the solar panels. Do you want an informative put in or noted for this application around the solar panels?
Yes, please, Chair.
Okay, could you provide some weasel words for me? Perhaps you'll put another pair of gloves on, typist gloves.
Councillor Croker, my understanding of what you were advising was, and my colleague said, was the expectation is details of the solar panels would be submitted when seeking discharge condition 5. So I think something along those lines of the expectation is details of the solar PV panels will be submitted as part of the discharge of condition 5 or something along those lines. Is that what you were intending?
Yes, I think, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Including the amendment to the condition as put forward by Councillor Vickers, I now move to the vote. Councillor Croker, yes.
I'm sorry, Chair. The reason I was a bit distracted was I was thinking about this BESS issue and would like an opinion, perhaps the legal officer. Would it be possible for an approval, noting that this committee has concerns regarding the potential hazard of the BESS? I say that because clearly the housing at that end of the development won't be there for another 18 months at the earliest, which gives some time for perhaps things to be spoken about, discussed.
It's a difficult one because ultimately you have to consider whether the proposal is acceptable before you. And so I don't think you can say, 1, it's acceptable, but 2, we've got concerns. It's either acceptable or it's not. But I think what I think would be beneficial for everybody is if the BESS operator and the developer continue to engage to minimise any kind of safety issues. And whilst we can't make that happen because it's a separate landowner, we can encourage discussions to continue, and I understand some have already happened following the outline consent. So I think that's what we could seek or encourage through perhaps an informative. But I think it's difficult to do anything else. I think ultimately, if members were concerned, you would have to substantiate a refusal, and obviously we don't think that's possible here.
No, I mean, from my point of view, I think a refusal at this stage is not appropriate. It's unacceptable because of the time it's going to take to get housing to that point. But it is something I think that doesn't want to be dropped.
I think members must consider worst case scenario, which is a lack of engagement from the BESS operator. I mean, we've been told that that's actually not the case. It's not the line they're taking. But I think that you have to imagine how you would resolve this particular application if they refuse to engage at all. You still have to make a decision. You still have to determine the application, and you have to do it on what you have in front of you.
Councillor Clark.
Surely, Mr. Chairman, the way forward on this is, I hear what the planning solicitors just said. We're not looking to turn it down on the issue of the best, but as we're attaching informatives to this planning application, which in fact are signals or information rather than dump the application, surely the way forward is to put in an informative expressing our concerns over the best, the lack of information, and put into that informative the desire that the developer continue to engage with the best provider, or whatever you want to call it. And that's the way forward, surely.
Just wish to get the right words, Councillor. Thank you very much.
I think, Chairman, I don't think we need to agree the exact words here. I think perhaps we could send you something, Chairman, or whoever, because I think it's, we can certainly add an informative, but I don't think it's something we have to decide today. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Provided an informative can be added after the event, if I can use that word, the officers get the message basically that we've been putting across, and provided it's minuted that that's going to happen, I think we can be happy to move on.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, the officers will keep me abreast of what the discussions are with the applicant. I move to the vote on this particular item, and the recommendation is to approve reserved matters subject to conditions. All those in favour, please show. Okay. All those against? Any abstentions?
Okay, so we had 11 voting for and 1 against and no abstentions. Thank you.
The recommendation of the officers has been approved. Thank you.
Just going to swap office. Oh no, they're getting Councillor Raby. Oh, I don't think they.
We'll just wait for the members of the public to leave. Thank you. Just swap officers. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 6, DC 250523, land north of East Rusper. Please could the officer make presentation to committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The proposal seeks full planning permission for the erection of 18 dwellings, including 6 affordable dwellings, site access, open space, landscaping and supporting infrastructure on the land to the north-east of Rusper. So the application site is located north of East Street and east of the built-up area boundary of Rusper and the Rusper Conservation Area. The site is located opposite the constructed residential development of Longfield House and the consented residential development of Millfield Farm on East Street, as shown on this slide. As existing, the site is an undeveloped agricultural paddock which slopes from Rusper Village down eastwards. The site is tree-lined along the boundary with East Street, and there is a residential dwelling, 10 East Street, located on the western elevation. So that photo there shows you 10 East Street. The proposal seeks 18 dwellings, which will be set out in a cul-de-sac with active frontages to the south. Here are some street scenes showing the dwellings would step down with the landscape to the east along with the slope of the site. Dwellings would be 2-storey with pitched roof slopes and traditional design, including hanging tiles, timber cladding and decorative brick course. The proposal would have an inevitable urbanising impact on the rural setting due to the loss of the field. However, the quality of the design is considered acceptable and sympathetic. Some more photos of the elevations there for you. So the nearest residential dwelling neighbouring the site is number 10, which shares the western boundary with the site as shown in this photo. The proposed dwellings will be set back approximately 12 metres from the boundary and will be arranged so they are set further north than number 10, and the boundary adjacent to the dwelling would mainly be parking for plot 13. So on that slide there, the star visible is where the photo is taken from, and you can see dwellings will be further to the north. The proposal would be accessed from a T-junction onto East Street. The applicant has undertaken swept path analysis to demonstrate the access could be used by fire and refuse vehicles, and vehicles could turn within the site. The proposal also includes pedestrian access onto East Street to the south west of the site, with a footpath extension providing pedestrian access between the site and Rusper Village. It's also been demonstrated that access would provide appropriate vehicle and pedestrian visibility displays. The proposal would result in modest increase in vehicle movements with 8 two-way movements during the AM peak and 11 two-way movements during the PM peak. The applicant has offered to extend the 30 mile per hour speed limit further east with a new gateway feature, changing road surface, signage and rumble strips. These works are consistent with the works at Millfield Farm development just to the south. West Sussex have requested this be secured via 106 to ensure delivery either within the scheme or the Millfield Farm scheme. It is noted that the proposal, the site access has been subject to some preparatory felling and clearance works which were undertaken in advance of the submission of this application. The works cleared approximately 17 metres of tree line and vegetation to facilitate the access. These trees fall outside of the conservation area, and at the time of the works they were not subject to a tree protection order. However, a TPO has subsequently been placed along the boundary with East Street, that southern boundary there. Whilst these works were undertaken prior to the submission of the application, the loss has been taken into the planning balance, and the biodiversity net gain of the site has been calculated to provide a net gain inclusive of these trees. Just to briefly cover the visual impact, this plan shows the relationship between the Rusper Conservation Area and listed buildings. The site is well contained within the paddock and would not be prominent when viewed from the conservation area. The site would be visible from informal footpaths to the north, however. So there's some photos there to show you the application site as viewed from Rusper Conservation Area.
So in summary, the site is a draft allocation for at least 20 dwellings, including 6 affordable dwellings and 4, including 6 affordable dwellings. And the proposal accords with the shaping development in Horsham district guidance document. The council therefore considers the application positively. It's noted that the proposal is outside of the built area boundary and would have some urbanising impacts, including the loss of the trees to facilitate the access. All other aspects of the proposal have been found acceptable, subject to appropriate planning conditions as set out in the officer's report. A tilted ballot with presumption in favour of sustainable development is engaged in this instance. It is therefore the recommendation that planning permission is granted accordingly, subject to conditions set out within the officer's report and the completion of a legal agreement pursuant to section 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on the first speaker, and that's Luke Eldridge. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Luke Eldridge from Divine Homes. Thank you very much for the time today in allowing us to speak in favour of the application. Divine Homes is a traditional local house builder and currently building in Lower Beeding and shortly to start in Cowfold. Lower Beeding, which is near completion, has been well received and is integrated well into the village. To give you some examples of our current work. This application, as set out, is a draft allocation and was submitted in the submitted local plan and has now been further supported in the inclusion of the shaping development planning advice document, which, as you will be aware, directs the council to positively support sites within the submitted local plan to bolster the district's housing land supply. Rosper is seen by the council as a sustainable, medium-sized village capable of growth, with the site abutting the built-up area and no restrictive land designations. The scheme will deliver 18 high-quality homes to help address the housing issue, and includes a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom 2-storey homes, providing opportunity for first-time buyers, families and downsizers. We have worked closely with the planning officers to take on board comments and amended the layouts to now have the officers' support, resulting in a sustainable and well-integrated extension to the village. In fact, the application only had 7 letters of objection, which for a major scheme scale housing proposal is a small number. Additionally, the parish council welcomed the proposed highway improvement works, which will bring a wider benefit to Rosper's community. With the land owned by Divine Homes, the delivery is certain, and I can confirm that terms are agreed with Saxon Weald to deliver the affordable element. So the delivery of the affordable and market housing is not under question. Contributions through 106 and SIL will help to mitigate improve the long-term community benefits. I understand that new developments can raise concerns, but I firmly believe that this is a well-considered, balanced proposal that results in responding to local needs, reflecting the character of the area, and brings lasting benefits to Rosper and the future occupants of the dwellings. With a positive officer's recommendation and no statutory consultee objections, including highways, I respectively urge the committee to approve this application and allow Rosper to grow in a sustainable, inclusive and forward-looking manner.
Thank you very much. Now I invite George Sallows, Rosper Parish Council, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm George Sallows, Chair of Planning at Rosper Parish Council. It would seem that despite being adopted as part of Horsham's planning framework, there is a determination to ignore the Rosper Neighbourhood Plan and continue to develop both Rosper Parish and Rosper Village itself with significant overdevelopments. despite the fact that HDC Planning Committee has just approved 2 previously unplanned developments on the fringe of Russell Village, which have provided more than double the number of houses that was being proposed under the evolving new Horsham local plan for the village, the officers are now recommending another significant development on the edge of the village. This new development, all but bordering the Rusper Village Conservation Area, is outside of the existing built boundary of the village and directly opposite 2 other extensive developments along a narrow country lane on the approach to the village. The currently stalled new local plan was proposing RS1 and RS2 as development areas, which would have provided 27 new homes within Rusper within the plan period to 2035. Since then, HDC have approved 43 houses at Millfield and a new road directly opposite this proposal, and 6 houses in East Street, literally directly opposite the proposed site, along with 3 further houses being built at Longfield House. So HDC have now approved 52 new houses, which are already starting development in a village that the planners had suggested could support 27 during the entire plan period to 2035. That, with other single house developments within the village, means that HDC have already approved double the number originally suggested for the local plan, and we consider this a significant development. This is all several steps too far to agree this site would be to condemn Rusper Village to lose all its current charm and character as a small village and change it into a small town that will eventually be lost in the vast scale of development planned between Horsham and Crawley. Your own officers have said that this site is acceptable, but your design and conservation submission makes it clear that the proposal would, due to its scale and layout, change the wider setting in which the assets of the conservation area in this case are experienced. Additionally, the landscape architect submission states that whilst the site demonstrates some capacity for development, further refinement of the layout, open space provision and landscaping strategy is required, and that hasn't taken place. The pre-felling of section of protected woodland is regrettable, as it has constrained the range of viable layout solutions that could have preserved the rural approach into Rusper Village. The main comments outline our concerns and provide recommendations to enhance landscape and visual resources. This is from your own landscape architects. In fact, the developer has illegally removed 22 metres of hedge and more than 5 cubic metres of trees. That, despite the fact these weren't under a TPO at the time, there is a requirement to get permission for that from the Forestry Commission. The Fire Service submission raises a number of concerns that, should the council be minded to permit the development, then all of the conditions of the Fire Service recommendations should be applied. The West Sussex Highways submission seems to have ignored the key facts that parts of the village infrastructure, namely the shop, the church, the playground and the sports field, will not be accessible by foot. The proposal is to make pedestrians cross from the site on the southern side of East Street, which is completely opposite direction to all of these facilities. The crossing point is also one of the most dangerous places for pedestrians, even more so for half of the year when the setting sun completely blinds drivers entering the village at the key rush hour times. To access the local shop and facilities will require the residents crossing this dangerous road twice, the second time at the significant junction with Horsham Road. They also fail to acknowledge the impact of the development on the opposite side of East Street, where already permitted developments will introduce 4 new access roads, thus making this crossing even more dangerous. It is the Parish Council's view that without a proper pedestrian access, this site is completely unacceptable. It is the Parish Council's view that a suitable footway along the north side of East Street could easily be provided to join up to the existing footway to the west. If necessary, this could include some road narrowing to provide sufficient width.
Could you bring your comments to conclusion, please? Thank you.
Which would also contribute to traffic calming. Additionally, without This direct pedestrian access, the site becomes completely unsustainable as it ceases to be an extension of the village, but an isolated development that will completely reliant on motor access. In summary, Russell Parish Council call on the committee to reject this application using all or any of the valid planning reasons outlined in the Parish Council's written submission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to come back on a few of those points. To begin with the principle of development outside the built area boundary. As outlined in the officer's report, the proposal has been considered on its merits as a sustainable location and does form a draft allocation in the emerging local plan. It's also worth highlighting the proposal accords with the shaping development in Horsham district guidance. So when considered as a whole, officers have concluded that this is a sustainable location for development. In regard to changing the character of the conservation area, as I've outlined in the officer's report, the site is well enclosed, and there would be some urbanising impacts that is inevitable here, and it is acknowledged within the planning balance. Just worth noting that the conservation officer has reviewed the proposal, concluding that there would be less than substantial harm to the setting of the conservation area. In regard to fire risk, just to note there that the proposal has been reviewed by West Sussex County Council Fire, and they have requested a hydrant condition which is in place on this recommendation. Finally, with regards to the crossing point, it's noted that the speaker suggested an alternative crossing arrangement. We have to assess the proposal that's in front of us, and what we have here is pedestrian crossing to the southwest of the site. It does require pedestrians to cross the road there. However, that has been fully reviewed by West Sussex County Council Highways and been subject to a road safety audit, also reviewed by West Sussex County Council, who have raised no objection. So the evidence we have before us is that crossing would be safe and would provide a suitable pedestrian access into Rusper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now opening up for debate by the members. Councillor Mercer, yes.
Thank you, Chair. And some of this comes from personal experience. What significance should we give as a planning committee to the possibility that the trees felled were felled illegally without a licence and not taking account of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 to protect the birds and other animals that might well have been living in them?
Thank you. So the felling has been reviewed by our arboricultural officer, who is satisfied that in planning terms no offence has been committed. The felling of the trees in planning terms wasn't unlawful. With regards to whether the Forestry Commission would require a felling licence for those works, that falls outside of planning, unfortunately. So it's not something that we consider here within the planning balance. With regard to ecology and potential ecological impacts of removing those trees, as I say, it's unfortunate and that those works were undertaken prior to submitting the application. That said, the applicant has submitted, has done further ecological surveys to assess the potential impact of that, which have been reviewed by our ecologist. As a consequence of that, a large black box has been put on the site already in response to a concern the ecologist had of a potential roost which may have been disturbed. So in summary there, really the proposal has been reviewed by our arboricultural officer and our ecologist, and that's been taken into the planning balance.
And if this, and I don't know the case, and I'm not casting aspersions, I just don't know the circumstances. If there were no felling licence, it is entirely possible that if there were a conviction for that, that the person concerned would have to restock the area from which the trees were taken. It says explicitly in the Forestry Commission's guidelines that just because planning permission were granted doesn't remove the requirements that might be placed if there were a conviction around illegal felling. Does that not conflict with the idea of giving permission?
And my colleague may wish to come in here, but my understanding is obviously you can have different legislation. It might be you can do one thing under one legislation, you can't do it under the other. So if that is the case, we could grant permission, but whether they can implement it or not would be another matter, depending on if that was a requirement of the Forestry Commission. I don't know.
No, that's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Trott, yes.
Thanks, Chair. I just have two questions, comments, maybe. Firstly, the HDC housing amendment request, has that been now implemented? Because the speaker earlier kind of said a sentence on it, but do we know that recommendation, that amendment request from the HDC housing team has been actioned?
So paragraph 6.25 of the officer's report sets out the housing mix that we have proposed here. So what we see in that table there is the final proposal that's subject to this application.
And therefore that amendment requested has been actioned. That's my question.
Apologies, can I come back to you on that one?
Thanks. The second half of what I was saying is that the HDC landscape team have actually raised an objection. Didn't hear a lot of comment on that. Can I could I ask how that objection is being addressed, or is it not? Thank you.
So, as outlined within the officer's report, it's acknowledged that there would be some urbanising impact of the proposal, and that harm would be felt particularly from the informal public rights of way to the north of the proposal, and from the loss of trees to form the access. That harm is taken into the planning balance. However, it's not considered that is sufficient to overcome the benefits of the proposal on this occasion. So the recommendation would remain for approval, acknowledging that there would be a degree of harm there as outlined by the landscape officer.
Just going to say, I was just reading the comments from housing, and what housing asked for was certainty over the split, the 10-year split. So paragraph 6.25 does, in my view, address that concern, because it does give you the 10-year split. That's my reading of that. Thank you.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman. To return to this problem with the trees, I know that planning officers are trying to gloss over it slightly, and I know this is not a planning term, but in Trumpian terms, it's very, very sneaky of the developer to fell these trees before putting in an application. And I don't think this committee should approve it. What's actually happened, in fact, is that because these trees are being felled, there's not a true B&G calculation on this. In fact, the council's ecologist and biodiversity net gain officer has said that because of the loss of the trees, the current situation cannot be accounted for within the statutory BNG metric. Therefore, BNG cannot be satisfactorily calculated because the trees were removed before the application was made. Now, as I said, it's not only sneaky, but I think that should invalidate the application. Can I have the officer's comments, please?
Just before, I'm not sure that the officers are glossing over anything, Councillor Knoll. All right, thank you.
Just on the trees part, my colleague will comment on the ecology part. Is obviously, as officers, we're not best pleased when we get a call from a member of the public saying a lot of trees are being chopped down, and obviously that was investigated at the time. I think we have to though recognise in planning terms they were not protected. If you have a tree in your garden, you can chop it down without permission unless it's got a TPO on it. So, you know, whether or not it then falls foul of other legislation, which we've discussed today, is another matter. But in planning terms, they didn't need permission to chop them down. So whilst I think we should always try and facilitate a scheme that's landscape led and includes those trees, ultimately that's not what was before us. So I think we can't, unfortunately, Councillor Knoll, refuse it because they chopped down the trees. And my colleague will just address the ecology point for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to provide some reassurance, really, that the ecological value of those trees has been included within the baseline assessment. The BNG framework has procedures in place to account for degradation of habitat prior to the submission of an application. The proposal was reviewed by our in-house BNG officer, who's been quite thorough in that regard and made sure that BNG is delivered appropriately. In this instance, we'd have BNG delivered on site, but also the purchase of some off-site credit as well to make up that difference.
Councillor Knoll, yes.
Nevertheless, I do feel it should be noted that the loss of trees have not been accounted for within the statutory BNG metric. So there is a big question mark over this. However, although the BNG has been manipulated in favour of the developer, I understand exactly what the officers are saying, and I'm not going to continue to really oppose this because of this point, but I do want it noted. Other than that, thank you.
Any other comments, please? Oh, you're tied together or something. This time I'll go with Councillor Franklin first and then Councillor Livingstone.
Thanks. Yes, 2 points really. First, I didn't want to let the debate pass without a reference to the Parish Council's notes about or requests for consideration of pedestrian walkway pavement on the north side of East Street. I'm really familiar with that access, that approach to Rusper. It's not particularly pleasant walking or cycling up that road. And I think I understand that we have this application in front of us and we have to make a decision based on this. We can't change that. But I did want to record that, you know, I would be highly supportive of that view that the village want a much better environment for pedestrians. I think it's a shame that we can't do anything about that. I would like just some opinion perhaps from the officers on I know this is a balance, this argument around the sustainability of this site in terms of its access, its access to public transport, the fact it's outside the built-up area, and it's going to be another car-dependent kind of environment to live in. I'd just be interested to know how much weight really I should put upon those aspects of this application.
I think it's it's difficult when it meets the criterion that the shaping development document. So obviously that document has been developed because we recognise we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. We need to permit development outside built-up area boundaries. So it sets some criteria based on kind of national and local policy to support development, and obviously it does meet those criteria, and those criteria have been written to deliver sustainable development. And obviously whilst the new local plan has limited weight, the evidence base is still relevant, and obviously that again says this site is sustainable. It also, for those that are on the training yesterday for the appeal decision in West Chiltington, you know, some of the comments the inspector raised there in terms of sustainable development in a rural context, I think is quite relevant here as well. So I think it is difficult, if not practically impossible, to put forward an argument that the site is not sustainable. Thank you.
Councillor Livingston.
Yeah, the first speaker for this item on the agenda, the applicant, mentioned that this was an exclusive development. Can I therefore ask the officer how many dwellings are going to be in accordance with approved building regulations, approved document M, specifically M42 and M43 for accessible dwellings and wheelchair accessible dwellings?
To my knowledge, none of these proposed dwellings would be built specifically to those building regulations requirements. Just to say there that whilst we do support those particularly at pre-application stage and encourage developers to bring those forward, at this point in time that there's no policy in place that requires developers to do so, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand about the policy, but I think we can sum up and conclude that this isn't a fully inclusive development in that case.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Mercer, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry to come back. It was related to something the head of development said about the guidelines, and I just wanted to ask her. As I understand it, the guidelines you were talking about are advice. They are officers' advice to developers. They are not policy of the council because they have not been approved by either this committee or the council. Is that not correct?
The SD plan is not a policy. You're right. It is a guidance document. It doesn't rewrite policy, but what it does is essentially say what policy is. You know, it says this is what the MPPF says. This is what our Horsham District Planning Framework says. And obviously some of our policies within our Horsham District Planning Framework are out of date. So we have to recognise what the new policy context is. So you're right, it doesn't set policy, but what it does, it kind of summarises everything that's relevant in the context of where we are now without a 5-year housing land supply, and the fact that we do have to grant development outside of built-up area boundaries, and therefore it seeks to advise on, well, therefore what is appropriate in that context. Thank you.
Any last comments before I move to the vote? Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the point about the trees and the branches and things, I was reminded of a song, Big Yellow Taxi, about putting up a bat box. Didn't quite rhyme though. Anyway, I digress. One of the aspects I recall about this site, and I may need the officer to put a plan up, it has no pavements, no footways. Is that correct? Because I believe that aspect is quite unpopular for some of the places in the district. Just wonder whether any comments on that.
So that is correct. The site would largely rely on shared footways, on internal access, which is particularly why we're seeing that separate pedestrian access in the southwest to ensure that it's not crossing with the main vehicle access. Just to say as well, the internal layout has been reviewed by West Sussex to meet the requirements for a shared surface, and they've raised no objection to that.
Yeah, which I must admit, I found it somewhat disappointing. And it really also touches on the inclusivity aspect. Would you like your kids playing out there? Leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to move to the vote. And the recommendation is to approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and the completion of the necessary section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as is agreed by the director of place acting reasonably and properly. All those in favour, please show.
Chair, can you ask people to make it clearer how they voted, please?
You
Thank you.
okay? All those against? This way is going to be down to me, isn't it? Any abstentions?
So, Chair, we have the voting at the moment is currently 7 for and 7 against. So we're at the situation where you make the final decision.
Okay. Listening to the debate, I've not heard anything that would change my mind as I originally voted on this application. Therefore, I stick with my original vote and I vote in favour of the recommendation.
So it's therefore been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May we ask for a short recess?
Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes. Is that Okay, thank you. Moving on to, we'll be considering 7, 8 and 9, agenda items 7, 8 and 9 under one presentation, although we have one speaker for the first of these three items. So I'll ask the officer to make a single presentation to committee. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So these applications are brought back to committee following the withdrawal of Natural England's position statement on water neutrality. Since the publication of the committee reports, an additional representation has been received relating to agenda item 8, which is Pottersfield. This representation reasserts concerns raised during the public consultation period, as summarised in paragraph 3.6 of the original committee report, as well as raising questions regarding the appropriate assessment, the reliance on BNG units, climate change adaptation, and the earlier consideration of the application at the previous committee. So these applications have previously been considered at Planning Committee, where it was resolved to approve Planning Permission subject to the provision of water saving measures secured by conditions or through the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure water neutrality offsetting. Agenda item 7, which is Furness Lane, included conditions to achieve water neutrality, which are now sought for removal, with agenda items 8, Pottersfield, and 9, River Terrace, providing water offsetting, which was to be secured by way of a Section 106 legal agreement. In addition, agenda item 8 included the provision of off-site BNG gains. Since these resolutions, Natural England have removed their water neutrality statement, and water neutrality is no longer a requirement. Officers have undertaken an updated appropriate assessment on each of the applications on the basis of mitigation through a condition limiting water consumption to 110 litres per person per day. And subject to the imposition of a condition in this way, other water mitigation and offsetting measures are no longer required. The proposed developments remain acceptable in accordance with relevant local and national planning policies, subject to the inclusion of a condition limiting water. And in addition, the applicant for agenda item 8 has subsequently confirmed that BNG will be achieved by way of purchasing units through a habitat bank. On this basis, a legal agreement is no longer required, as this would be assessed and addressed by way of the post-decision statutory condition. So these applications are recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed in section 7 of each of the relevant committee reports. Thank you.
Thank you very, excuse me. Thank you very much. We have one speaker for DC 241538, and invite Chris Barker to, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair members. I'll keep it swift, as you've heard from me already this evening. Thank you for the supportive note on the water neutrality measures. I just wanted to reiterate, following the March 2025 decision, that my clients, Olivia Homes, have also undertaken further works in relation to highway improvements that was recommended by members in terms of taking that forward with officers to delegate future improvements. So I'm pleased to confirm that we've moved things on significantly since that time, working closely with West Sussex County Council Highways and ward members, and we've managed to improve the works on Furness Lane itself, provided additional on-site parking on the Spine Road, and delivered improved pedestrian permeability within the site, including new footpath links. We've also agreed off-site pedestrian enhancements, including new drop curbs along Furness Mead to support inclusive access into the village. Importantly, West Sussex County Council Highways and ward members have accepted these details. That's a positive move forward since March. In addition, following councillor requests, a planning condition on the inclusion of swift boxes has also been included into the scheme. So just to show some movements further forward, but that's all from me. So thank you, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will open debate on this particular item, DC 241538. Any member wishing to make a comment on this? No. Oh, yes, Councillor Knoll. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to welcome the additional improvements that have been made to the Henfield application, the Henfield site. It's very, very welcome to hear that the developer's making very positive moves there, and I'm very pleased to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Having gone through the papers, I don't see any reference to fire hydrants, but I thought there was the need for one. Maybe officers can cover that one. If it helps officers, basically prior to the first application, that provision of a fire hydrant to be agreed with West Sussex County Council Fire and Rescue as per previous item 3.19 paragraph 109.
Sorry, what are you, which report are you referring to there, Councillor Clark?
Page 101, what is it, page 109, paragraph 3. It's not been carried over, is the point.
Trying to find this in the previous report. Thank you.
I said I found it 3.19.
I'm just trying to find if there was a condition in the original report to then check it with the previous one.
Do you want to move a motion to add that? Well, sorry, Chairman, I should probably direct that.
Fine, I've got two vice chairs.
If we had a motion to add that, we can just deal with it that way.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You probably heard that, did you, Councillor Clark?
For the sake of expediency, the answer is yes. I'm quite happy for officers to put the wording in as basically just making it happen. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Vickers, all those in favour of the motion to add, carry that forward?
Yeah.
Unanimous, thank you. Any other comments on this particular application? No? Okay. On that basis, we'll go to the vote to approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and the completion of the necessary 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. All those in favour, please show.
It's this board below, isn't it? Thank you. It's unanimous.
Okay, therefore the recommendation has been approved. Moving on to the debate on the debate onto DC 241887. That's Pottersfield, Mill Lane, Partridge Green. Any officer wishing, any member wishing to comment on this particular application? No. Okay, I'll go to the vote, and it is to approve outline planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour, please show.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Okay, moving on to DC 241601, River Terrace, Ridgehurst Drive, Horsham. Any member wishing to comment on this particular? I know you can't vote, Councillor Trott. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Councillor Trott, please carry ahead.
So I have had a little bit of correspondence from people on this one, and the main concern, and I know probably there's nothing we can do about it here, but I want to raise it anyway, is the conduct of the builders, who are behaving rather irresponsibly, driving too fast, etc., etc. Reportedly, I have no evidence, first-hand evidence, but that is what the postbag says. The other thing that might be something we could add in somewhere, and that is that the builders should be potentially liable for any damage to the communal parking area they're using to drive their trucks and reverse around, which is the communal parking area used by the local residents. And there is apparently already some wear being shown in the area, and not much has started yet. So that there is concern that they'll destroy that car park. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Trott. In terms of the first point, obviously we can't control people using the public highway, and if it's a safety matter, it's either police or so we can't control that through planning. Nor, unfortunately, can we control the second matter, because essentially that's a civil matter. It falls outside of planning, so it was something they would have to seek their own independent advice on, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Clark, yes.
Sorry, I'm a bit puzzled there. I heard what you said, but surely we have the ability to bring in a condition that basically says that they have to submit how they're going to build it, where they're going to build it, and all the rest of it, don't we?
You can add a construction management plan. Obviously, that can't control what's outside of the site, though, essentially. And ultimately, it's two houses, so we would usually reserve those types of conditions for much larger schemes where you might need a compound or things like that. We wouldn't usually do it for two dwellings. And as I said, in any event, if they're builders park on the public highway, we can't control that, or if they're speeding down the road. And if that's the key concerns, such a condition wouldn't address that in any event. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move to the vote, and that is, the recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour, please show.
Thank you, that's unanimous.
Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Moving on to agenda item number 10, is DC 251232, Thrills Farm Cottages, Thrills Lane, West Chiltington. Please could the officer make the presentation to committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks to demolish the existing 2 semi-detached cottages and erect 3 dwellings with associated parking and landscaping. This application is brought to committee as a departure from the local plan. So the application site, as shown by the red outline on the location plan here, is nestled between established residential dwellings, as you can see. The application site is located outside but adjacent to the built-up area boundary of West Chiltington, as shown by the blue dashed line. The site also lies adjacent to the West Chiltington Lanes Conservation Area, as shown by the dotted green line, where there are a number of locally listed buildings within the vicinity, which are shown by the orange stars. So here are the existing and proposed site plans. As shown, the development proposes 2 semi-detached dwellings and 1 detached dwelling. The proposed dwellings would sit parallel to Thrills Lane and would be accessed utilising the existing access to the southwest. Parking and amenity spaces would be provided to each dwelling. So these are the proposed floor plans. Here's the proposed front and rear elevations. And then the side elevations are there. And these are the site photos showing the existing dwellings as well as the wider context. So the application site is located outside of any designated built-up area and is therefore located within the countryside in policy terms. And the development would be contrary to policies 1, 2, 4 and 26 of the HDPF. However, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply where the tilted balance under paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged. The proposal would provide 3 market dwellings where this would contribute to the identified housing need within the district and would meet the criteria contained within the council's Shaping Development in Horsham District guidance document. The development would represent an expansion appropriate to Thrills Lane on a site that adjoins the built-up area boundary and appears as an infill development. The proposal would not result in harm to the character and appearance of the site and surroundings, nor the interest of the conservation area and locally listed buildings, and the proposal would not result in adverse impact to the amenity of neighbouring residential properties or the public highway network. Subject to appropriate conditions, the proposal would be water neutral, would be acceptable, and in ecology terms as well. And the cumulative benefits of the proposed development are considered to outweigh the conflict with the development plan, and the proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions within section 7 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no registered speakers for this particular item, so I'll open it up for members to debate. Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, the demolition is, as I understand it from the Conservation Officer, a pair of semi-detached dwellings. And the proposal is for a semi-detached house and a detached house. A pair of semi-detached. Does that mean 4 semi-detached? Or that's the issue. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. There is an advantage of keeping semis in place in this location. The issue is that there are plenty of big houses, 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and the rest of it in West Chiltington, as everybody knows. Comment was that I have received from several people is it would have been better if it had been 2 by 2. In other words, as Councillor Mercer pointed out, 2 sets of semis, rather than a 4-bedroom house that we don't need, that West Chiltington doesn't need at all. And the housing need in West Chiltington would be for 2 semis times 2, rather than a 4-bedroom house and 2 semis. But there's no reason to turn it down, really, as far as I'm concerned. But I was asked to make that comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members? Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief one, really, about the BNG calculation. I mean, I must admit, I find it confusing where you can have 0.041 of a hectare of trees before, reduced to 0.024 of a hectare of trees after, but the BNG score goes up on the basis that we move from mixed condition to moderate condition. It all seems very subjective, but I guess that's the way it is these days. Thank you.
So just to come back on that point, it is weighted dependent on the sort of distinctiveness and condition of what's there and then what's being proposed. So I don't know the specifics of the calculation, but I think that's where the sort of percentages and numbers kind of come in.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I appreciate that. It's just in the with regard to trees, they don't just appear, do they? They take a while to generate. But anyway, it's not a stopper on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croker. Any other comments? No? Okay, therefore I will go to the vote on this particular item, and the recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour, please show.
Thank you. That's 14-4, which is unanimous.
Thank you very much. Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Moving on to agenda item number 11, which is DC 251417, Sweepers, Saucelands Lane, Shipley. Please could the officer make the presentation? Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal relates to the demolition of the existing dwelling and the replacement with a two-bed dwelling, and this application is brought to committee as the applicant is an employee of the council. So the application site, as defined by the red outline here, is located outside of any defined built-up area and is therefore within the countryside in policy terms. The application site is surrounded by agricultural fields and woodland, with sporadic residential dwellings within the vicinity. The site comprises an existing bungalow with an existing access to the southeast. So here's the proposed block plan showing the location of the proposed dwelling within the site. The existing garage and trees would be retained. So here's the elevations. And here's the site photos showing the existing dwelling as well as its position within the street scene. So the proposed replacement dwelling would sit comfortably within the context of the site and would represent a one-for-one replacement. While resulting in the loss of a non-designated heritage asset, the proposal is not considered objectionable in principle, with the Conservation Officer considering it acceptable. The proposed dwelling is considered to be of an acceptable design. It would not result in harm to the amenities of the nearby residential properties, nor the function of the public highway network, and subject to conditions would be acceptable in terms of water and ecology. For these reasons, the proposed development is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions contained within section 7 of the committee report. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have no registered speakers for this particular item, so I'll move to the debate by members. Thank you. Any member wishing to comment on this? Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind what I said about one of the earlier applications, I think I should thank the applicant in this case for using solar tiles. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Vickers, did you want to?
Sorry, Chairman, can you just show me the elevation of the design? Sorry, I missed that bit. Yes, no, it looks absolutely fine. I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to comment on this particular application? No, therefore I move to the vote. The recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour, sorry, Councillor Mercer, yes.
No.
a little premature, I think, Councillor Mercer.
Go to the back of the pack.
Okay, so all those in favour, please vote.
Thank you. That's 13 voted and it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Item 12, urgent business. You'll be pleased to know I have no urgent business other just to make a short comment, which is that this is the final planning committee meeting of 2025. I'd like to thank members and the officers for your engagement, commitment and guidance and support throughout the year. May I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year. And at 2000 hours, I bring the meeting of the Planning Committee to a close. Thank you very much. Yes. Do you want to make